Geauga County Auditor's Office. Would you want to come up to this
Sure.
seat so we can
You
hear?
want anywhere here?
In the front there.
I'm not going to sit back there. I'm Chuck Walder. I know some of you, but not all of you. This is my chief deputy, Ron Lighty. I appreciate you having us here. We had sent, I think, a series of emails requesting a special meeting initially because we thought there was some urgency to the matter, but I guess it was concluded eventually that it was too difficult. I didn't realize how big the board is. I guess that's the first thing. I'm used to boards of 3, and you guys have like 3 rooms full of people. But as auditor, I serve as your fiscal officer. So I have I've been a student of this job for only a little over a year. So I will start out by apologizing in advance because some of the things we're going to talk about today you probably are going to ask. The natural question is, how come we've never heard this before? I can't answer that question of why you didn't hear of it before. I can assure you one thing, this is what we're going to discuss is not new. It's just newly being required from our office. So for whatever reason, the past regimes did not take to heart some of the ORC requirements that we are trying to do now. So kind of starting that off, kind of what led to my request to have a meeting, we received a request to certify a fairly important document, which was a contract. And there's 2 pillars that we follow in the auditor's office, 2 ORCs that become our pillars. 31916 is one which determines how we pay bills and what is required to pay those bills. And the other one is 5405.14, which is, am I right, 17 or 14?
41.
4.41, I had the numbers down.
So that one against 54.
It's
5405.41.
5705.41.
57.
Yes, and that law is the restriction on appropriations and expenditures. So that governs how you can appropriate and expend money. But there's also a caveat to that particular ORC, and that's Section D, which deals primarily with contracts and the definition of contracts. So, first of all, when we received your contract, it's unusual for a couple of reasons. It's not a conventional contract. We're used to seeing plowing contracts, contracts for engineering services, those type of things. This is an employment contract. So the first thing we had to do is get an opinion from our prosecuting attorney to say, is this in fact considered a contract under the ORC? And in fact, they determined it was. The second is, how do we comply with the requirements contained in it? And the ORC D1 in particular identifies the requirements that we have to follow for this contract. And it says, no subdivision or taxing unit. You are a taxing unit. Anybody who can put a levy on the ballot is considered a taxing unit. You fall under that category. So no taxing unit shall make any contract or give any order involving the expenditure of money unless there is attached thereto a certificate of the fiscal officer of the subdivision. That would be me. To certify that the amount required to meet the obligation. So what that basically says is prior to the engagement of any contractual obligation, there needs to be a certification that in fact the obligation can be met with matching funds. That's basically what it's saying. I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because this is the practice that has not been necessarily followed diligently by my predecessors. Having said that, I don't think anyone in this room wants to break the law. I don't want to. I want to make sure we do things right. My job is not to peruse your contracts and determine whether they have merit or no merit. It is to determine strictly the financial obligation that we're committing to. So, because I keep referring to your contract that you submitted to us as somewhat complicated, it contains things above and beyond what is normal to the naked eye of determining the value or obligation is X. That is not obvious in this contract. It has to be obvious, because I can't be the auditor and be the accountant. I can't be on both sides of that equation. I should be a non-biased party looking at a set of numbers and certifying whether or not we have matching funds to meet that obligation. So what I'm coming to you with is a set of requests to say we need to change how we do business. And again, I appreciate that this is new and it shouldn't be new. This particular law was passed in 2004 and it was last amended in 2012. I don't particularly know what the amendment was in 2012, but I don't think it was constructively pertinent to the contract version of it. So I believe this law has been in existence for quite some time. It does go on to say there are other considerations, and I would encourage you to read especially Section D as it pertains to contracts. But basically it says, if this contract is not certified prior to execution, it doesn't exist. It's null and void. So we need to kind of rewind that, and we need to do it in the right order. There is some other considerations you may want to take into account. For example, many contracts are vetted by an attorney of your choice, whether you use outside counsel. I don't really know what your entity uses, but oftentimes the vetting of it legally comes before I certify, because then if there are any material changes to the contract, we're not certifying a contract which is then nullified by the fact that it's modified prior to its signature. So the process is you provide me with a contract, and there has to be a clear delineation of what the fiscal obligation is. And the annual fiscal obligation is our calendar year, not your operating year. I don't know that you're on calendar year, you're probably on.
State fiscal year.
You're on a different, yeah. So we go by calendar year at the county. That's how we appropriate funds, that's how I have to certify it. I can only certify one fiscal year at a time. So this is considered a continuing contract, which means every year it has to be recertified for the amount of that year and that year only. This contract has a lot of moving parts to it. You have wages, which is a contractual obligation. You have benefits, which are contractual. That's different than an employee. It's contractual in this particular document. You also have some other, what I would consider material items which have obligation to them. If a car is involved, that's a material obligation. If there are insurance policies, the premiums of those insurance policies are obligations. I don't have any insight into those costs. So those should be submitted to me with the contract.